Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates spent weekends at the mall or gossiping about boys, she could be found at the local gym, pushing her body to its limits, or at the shooting range with her father, perfecting her aim. Her parents, both former military, had instilled in her a deep respect for discipline, honor, and the protection of others. Growing up in Corpus Christi, Sarah was no stranger to challenges. Her father, a retired Marine, had served 3 tours in Iraq, while her mother worked as a nurse at the local veterans hospital. Their modest home was filled with stories of service, sacrifice, and the unwavering commitment to something greater than oneself. From an early age, Sarah knew she wanted to follow in their footsteps, but she had her sights set on something even more demanding than what her parents had achieved. At 17, Sarah stood 5 feet 6 inches tall, with the lean, muscular build of someone who had been training seriously for years. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her brown eyes held an intensity that made people take notice. She wasn't the tallest or the strongest person in any room, but there was something about her presence that commanded respect. Her high school teachers often remarked on her focus and determination, qualities that set her apart from her peers. The idea of joining the Navy SEALs first came to Sarah during her junior year of high school. She had been researching different military career paths when she stumbled across an article about the first women to attempt SEAL training. The more she read, the more convinced she became that this was her calling. The SEALs represented the pinnacle of military excellence, the most elite fighting force in the world. The fact that so few women had even attempted the training only made Sarah more determined to succeed. Her parents were initially skeptical when she announced her intentions. Her father, understanding the brutal nature of SEAL training from his own military experience, tried to gently steer her toward other options. Her mother worried about the physical and emotional toll such a demanding career would take on her daughter. But Sarah's mind was made up. She had found her purpose, and nothing was going to deter her from pursuing it. The preparation began immediately. Sarah threw herself into an intense training regimen that would have broken most people. She woke up at 4:30 every morning for a 5-mile run, followed by 2 hours of strength training before school. After classes, she would swim laps at the community center, practicing the techniques she had learned from YouTube videos and military training manuals. Weekends were reserved for longer endurance challenges, like 20-mile hikes with a weighted backpack or marathon swimming sessions. Her social life became virtually non-existent, but Sarah didn't mind. While her classmates were posting pictures from parties on social media, she was documenting her training progress and studying military history. She read every book she could find about special operations, memorizing tactics, strategies, and the personal accounts of elite soldiers. Her bedroom walls were covered with workout schedules, nutritional plans, and motivational quotes from famous military leaders. The physical preparation was only part of the equation. Sarah knew that mental toughness would be equally important, if not more so. She began practicing meditation and visualization techniques, learning to control her breathing and heart rate under stress. She deliberately put herself in uncomfortable situations, like taking ice-cold showers or holding her breath underwater for extended periods, all to build her tolerance for discomfort. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed at school. Teachers and coaches began to take interest in her unusual training regimen. The wrestling coach, a former Army Ranger, offered to help her develop her combat skills. Under his guidance, Sarah learned basic hand-to-hand combat techniques, focusing on leverage and technique rather than brute strength. She quickly discovered that her smaller size could actually be an advantage, allowing her to move faster and be more agile than larger opponents. During her senior year, Sarah's training intensified even further. She had contacted a Navy recruiter who specialized in special operations candidates. He provided her with the official SEAL training standards and helped her understand what she would need to accomplish to even be considered for the program. The numbers were daunting. She needed to complete a 500-yard swim in 12 minutes and 30 seconds, do at least 50 push-ups in 2 minutes, 50 sit-ups in 2 minutes, 10 pull-ups with no time limit, and run 1.5 miles in 10 minutes and 30 seconds. When Sarah first attempted the full physical screening test, she fell short in several areas. Her swim time was too slow, and she could only manage 8 pull-ups. Rather than becoming discouraged, she used these failures as motivation to train harder. She found a former Navy SEAL who had recently retired and convinced him to mentor her. Under his brutal but effective training program, Sarah's performance began to improve dramatically. The pull-ups were the most challenging obstacle. Sarah's lighter frame meant she had less muscle mass to work with, but her mentor taught her that technique and mental determination could overcome physical limitations. She practiced pull-ups until her hands bled, then wrapped them in tape and continued. Gradually, her numbers climbed from 8 to 10, then 15, then 20. Swimming had always been one of Sarah's strengths, but the military swim test required a specific technique that was more about efficiency than speed. She learned to streamline her movements, reducing drag and conserving energy. Her mentor timed her relentlessly, pushing her to shave seconds off her time with each attempt. The progress was slow but steady, and eventually she was consistently beating the required time by a comfortable margin. The running component seemed straightforward at first, but Sarah quickly learned that military running was different from civilian running. It wasn't just about speed, it was about maintaining pace while carrying equipment, running in formation, and being ready to perform other tasks immediately after completing the run. Her training runs became increasingly complex, incorporating obstacles, equipment, and varying terrain. As graduation approached, Sarah's physical capabilities had transformed dramatically. She could now exceed every requirement of the SEAL physical screening test, often by significant margins. Her body fat percentage was in the single digits, her cardiovascular endurance was exceptional, and her mental toughness had been forged through months of pushing beyond what she thought possible. The decision to enlist came with its own challenges. Sarah's guidance counselor tried to convince her to consider college first, arguing that she could always join the military after getting a degree. Several universities had offered her athletic scholarships based on her impressive physical achievements. But Sarah knew that waiting would only diminish her focus and determination. She wanted to begin her military career immediately, while her motivation was at its peak. Her parents, seeing her unwavering commitment and the remarkable transformation in her capabilities, finally gave their full support. They understood that their daughter had found her calling and that trying to dissuade her would be futile. Her father, in particular, began to feel a sense of pride in Sarah's dedication. He recognized in her the same drive and commitment that had sustained him through his own military service. The enlistment process was lengthy and thorough. Sarah underwent extensive background checks, medical examinations, and psychological evaluations. Every aspect of her life was scrutinized, from her academic performance to her personal relationships. The recruiters made it clear that even the slightest red flag could disqualify her from special operations consideration. One of the most challenging parts of the process was the psychological evaluation. The military needed to ensure that candidates could handle the extreme stress and moral complexities of special operations work. Sarah was subjected to hours of testing and interviews, designed to probe her mental stability, decision-making abilities, and ethical framework. She answered hundreds of hypothetical questions about combat situations, moral dilemmas, and leadership challenges. The waiting period after completing all the requirements was agonizing. Sarah continued her training regimen, knowing that she couldn't afford to lose any of the physical conditioning she had worked so hard to achieve. She also began studying military protocol, chain of command, and basic seamanship, wanting to arrive at boot camp as prepared as possible. When the acceptance letter finally arrived, Sarah felt a mixture of relief, excitement, and apprehension. She had been accepted into the Navy with a guaranteed opportunity to attempt SEAL training, provided she successfully completed basic training and met all the ongoing requirements. It was the first major milestone in what she knew would be a long and difficult journey. The weeks leading up to her departure were bittersweet. Sarah spent time with family and the few close friends she had maintained throughout her intense training period. Everyone seemed to understand that this was a pivotal moment, not just for Sarah but for everyone who cared about her. She was embarking on a path that would fundamentally change who she was and how she saw the world. Her father took her aside the night before she was scheduled to leave for basic training. He handed her a small compass that he had carried during his deployments in Iraq. It was scratched and worn, but it had guided him through some of the most difficult moments of his life. He told Sarah that while the physical compass might help her navigate in the field, the most important compass was the moral one she carried inside herself. No matter what challenges she faced, no matter how difficult the training became, she needed to remember who she was and what she stood for. Sarah's mother was more emotional about the departure. She had watched her daughter transform from a determined teenager into a focused, disciplined young woman who was ready to face challenges that would break most people. While she was proud of Sarah's achievements, she couldn't help but worry about the dangers and difficulties that lay ahead. The night before Sarah left, they spent hours talking about everything except the military, trying to capture a few last moments of normalcy before everything changed. The morning of departure arrived with typical Texas heat and humidity. Sarah's parents drove her to the military entrance processing station in San Antonio, where she would complete her final paperwork and take the oath of enlistment. The facility was bustling with young men and women from all backgrounds, all about to embark on their own military journeys. Sarah noticed that she was one of only a handful of women who appeared to be heading for combat-related positions. Taking the oath of enlistment was a profound moment for Sarah. As she raised her right hand and repeated the words that millions of service members had spoken before her, she felt the weight of the commitment she was making. She was promising to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, to bear true faith and allegiance to her country, and to obey the orders of those appointed over her. It was a solemn promise that would define the rest of her life. The bus ride to Naval Station Great Lakes in Illinois gave Sarah time to reflect on how far she had already come. 2 years earlier, she had been just another high school student with big dreams and no clear path to achieve them. Now she was beginning a journey that would test every aspect of her character, push her physical and mental capabilities to their absolute limits, and ultimately determine whether she had what it took to join the most elite military unit in the world. The first glimpse of Naval Station Great Lakes came through the bus windows as dawn broke over Lake Michigan. Sarah pressed her face to the glass, taking in the sprawling complex of buildings, training facilities, and parade grounds that would be her home for the next several months. The base looked imposing and institutional, exactly what she had expected from military training facilities. Other recruits on the bus were mostly quiet, each lost in their own thoughts about what lay ahead. Processing into basic training was a whirlwind of paperwork, medical checks, and organizational chaos. Sarah found herself in long lines with dozens of other new recruits, all waiting to be assigned to their training divisions. The drill instructors moved through the crowds like sharks, already beginning the process of breaking down civilian attitudes and rebuilding them in the military mold. Their voices carried across the processing center, sharp and commanding, leaving no doubt about who was in charge. Sarah was assigned to Division 245, one of the integrated divisions that included both male and female recruits. As she gathered with her new shipmates for the first time, she quickly sized up the group. There were farm kids from the Midwest, city kids from both coasts, and everything in between. Ages ranged from 18 to the mid-20s, with varying levels of physical fitness and military knowledge. Sarah noticed immediately that she was one of only 12 women in a division of 80 recruits. The division's senior drill instructor was Petty Officer First Class Rodriguez, a compact, intense man with 20 years of Navy service under his belt. During his initial speech to the division, he made it clear that he didn't care about anyone's background, their reasons for joining, or their personal goals. His job was to transform them from a collection of individuals into a cohesive military unit, and he would use whatever methods necessary to accomplish that mission. The first few weeks of basic training were exactly as brutal as Sarah had expected. The days began before sunrise with physical training, followed by classroom instruction, practical exercises, and more physical challenges. The pace was relentless, designed to overwhelm recruits and force them to adapt quickly to military discipline and procedures. Sleep deprivation became a constant companion, with lights out at 2100 hours and reveille at 0400. Sarah's prior physical preparation served her well during the initial fitness assessments. While many of her fellow recruits struggled with the basic requirements, she consistently scored in the top percentiles. This early success brought both advantages and challenges. The drill instructors recognized her potential and began pushing her harder, expecting more from her than from recruits who were still working to meet minimum standards. The academic portions of basic training covered everything from Navy history and traditions to basic seamanship and military law. Sarah's disciplined study habits from high school served her well, and she quickly established herself as one of the top academic performers in the division. She found herself helping struggling classmates during study periods, a role that came naturally to her but also attracted attention from the instructors. Hand-to-hand combat training was where Sarah's smaller size initially seemed like a disadvantage. Many of her male shipmates outweighed her by 50 pounds or more, and the basic techniques favored size and strength over finesse. However, the martial arts training she had received from her high school wrestling coach proved invaluable. She quickly adapted the military techniques to work with her body type, focusing on speed, leverage, and precision rather than brute force. During one particularly memorable combat training session, Sarah was paired with Jenkins, a recruit from Ohio who stood 6 feet 2 inches and weighed over 200 pounds. Jenkins had been making subtle comments about women in combat roles since the beginning of training, and Sarah could see that he viewed this pairing as an opportunity to prove his point. The instructor demonstrated a basic takedown technique and told the pairs to practice. Jenkins approached the exercise with obvious overconfidence, telegraphing his movements and relying purely on his size advantage. Sarah waited for her moment, then used his forward momentum against him, executing a perfect hip throw that sent him crashing to the mat. The impact was loud enough to draw attention from across the training area. Jenkins got up, clearly embarrassed, and the instructor used the moment to reinforce the lesson that technique and training could overcome size disadvantages. The incident with Jenkins became a turning point for Sarah's standing within the division. Word spread quickly among the recruits that the small woman from Texas could hold her own against much larger opponents. The subtle hostility that some of the male recruits had shown toward the women in the division began to fade, replaced by a grudging respect for Sarah's capabilities. Swimming was another area where Sarah excelled. The Navy placed heavy emphasis on water survival skills, and recruits spent hours in the pool learning everything from basic swimming techniques to complex water rescue procedures. Sarah's years of training had made her equally comfortable in the water as on land, and she often served as a training partner for recruits who struggled with the aquatic requirements. One of the most challenging aspects of basic training was the constant pressure to conform while simultaneously being evaluated for leadership potential. The drill instructors were constantly watching for recruits who could take charge in difficult situations while still following orders and maintaining unit cohesion. Sarah found herself walking a careful line between demonstrating her capabilities and avoiding the perception that she was trying to show off or undermine the authority structure. The leadership opportunities came in small ways at first. Sarah was appointed as a compartment leader, responsible for ensuring that her section of the barracks met inspection standards. Later, she was selected as a squad leader during field exercises, coordinating the movements and actions of 8 other recruits. Each responsibility brought additional scrutiny from the instructors and higher expectations for performance. As basic training progressed into its middle phase, the physical and mental challenges intensified. The famous Navy obstacle course became a weekly ordeal, testing everything from upper body strength to problem-solving abilities. Sarah approached each obstacle methodically, using her smaller size to her advantage on challenges that required agility and precision. Her times consistently placed her in the top 10% of all recruits, male and female. The confidence course was particularly challenging for many recruits. It required them to navigate a series of increasingly difficult obstacles while carrying full combat gear. Fear of heights, lack of upper body strength, and simple mental blocks caused many recruits to struggle or fail entirely. Sarah's rock climbing experience from her youth proved invaluable, and she often found herself encouraging struggling teammates and offering technique advice. During one confidence course exercise, a recruit named Patterson froze halfway up a 30-foot cargo net climb. He was a good kid from Montana who had never been comfortable with heights, and the combination of altitude and pressure had paralyzed him with fear. The instructors were prepared to mark him as a failure when Sarah called up to him from below, offering specific guidance on hand and foot placement. Her calm, confident voice helped Patterson regain his composure and complete the obstacle. The instructors noticed Sarah's natural ability to motivate and guide her teammates. This type of peer leadership was exactly what they looked for in potential candidates for advanced training programs. After the confidence course exercise, Petty Officer Rodriguez pulled Sarah aside for a brief counseling session. He asked about her post-training goals and made it clear that he believed she had the potential for special operations training. Weapons training introduced another set of challenges and opportunities. Sarah had grown up around firearms, but military weapons handling required a completely different level of precision and safety consciousness. The M16 service rifle became as familiar to her as her own hands through hours of assembly, disassembly, and maintenance practice. On the firing ranges, her marksmanship scores consistently placed her among the top shooters in the division. The instructors began using Sarah as a demonstration model during weapons training sessions. Her technique was textbook perfect, and her consistency made her an ideal example for struggling recruits to emulate. This visibility brought additional pressure, as every mistake was magnified and every success was expected rather than celebrated. Sarah learned to thrive under this microscope, using the attention as motivation to maintain the highest possible standards. Damage control training was one of the most unique aspects of Navy basic training. Recruits learned to fight fires, repair battle damage, and manage flooding scenarios that could occur aboard ship. The training took place in realistic shipboard mock-ups, complete with smoke, water, and the disorienting effects of emergency lighting. Sarah's ability to remain calm under pressure and think clearly in chaotic situations made her a natural leader during these exercises. During one particularly intense damage control scenario, Sarah's team was tasked with containing a simulated flooding situation while fighting a fire in an adjacent compartment. The exercise was designed to overwhelm the recruits and force them to prioritize competing demands. Sarah quickly assessed the situation, delegated responsibilities to her team members based on their individual strengths, and established a systematic approach to addressing both emergencies simultaneously. The scenario was complicated when one of her team members, overwhelmed by the smoke and chaos, began to panic. Sarah immediately recognized the signs of stress overload and calmly redirected the struggling recruit to a simpler task that he could handle successfully. Her quick thinking prevented the exercise from becoming a complete failure and demonstrated the type of leadership under pressure that would be essential in real combat situations. As basic training entered its final phase, Sarah's reputation within the division had evolved significantly. She was respected by her peers for her competence and willingness to help others succeed. The instructors had identified her as a standout performer with exceptional potential for advanced training. Most importantly, she had proven to herself that she could not only survive military training but excel at it. The final physical fitness test was the culmination of months of preparation and training. Sarah approached it with quiet confidence, knowing that her scores would play a significant role in determining her future assignments and opportunities. The push-ups, sit-ups, and run were now routine for her, and she exceeded the maximum scoring standards in all categories. Her performance placed her second overall in the division and first among all female recruits. Graduation from basic training was a proud moment for Sarah and her family. Her parents had traveled from Texas to attend the ceremony, and the pride in their eyes was unmistakable. During the graduation parade, Sarah marched with the precision and confidence of a seasoned sailor, her uniform crisp and her bearing sharp. The transformation from civilian to military professional was complete. Following the ceremony, Petty Officer Rodriguez approached Sarah and her family. He told her parents that their daughter was one of the finest recruits he had trained in his 20-year career. More significantly, he confirmed that Sarah had been selected for advanced training opportunities and would be proceeding directly to the preparatory course for Special Operations candidacy. The brief leave period between basic training and her next assignment gave Sarah a chance to reflect on how much she had changed over the previous months. The physical transformation was obvious, but the mental and emotional changes were even more profound. She had discovered reserves of strength and determination that she hadn't known existed. More importantly, she had learned to function as part of a team while maintaining her individual excellence. As she prepared to begin the next phase of her journey toward becoming a Navy SEAL, Sarah understood that basic training had only been the beginning. The challenges ahead would be exponentially more difficult, and the attrition rate would be much higher. But she had proven to herself and others that she belonged in this world, and she was ready for whatever came next. The Naval Special Warfare Preparatory School in Great Lakes was a world apart from basic training. Where boot camp had been about building foundation skills and military bearing, NSWPS was specifically designed to prepare candidates for the grueling ordeal of SEAL training. Sarah arrived with 12 other sailors, all volunteers who had excelled in their basic training and expressed interest in special operations careers. The attrition rate at this level was already high, with many candidates washing out before even reaching the main SEAL training program. The instructors at NSWPS were all active-duty SEALs or recent graduates of SEAL teams. Their approach was fundamentally different from the drill instructors in basic training. Where boot camp instructors used intimidation and volume to break down civilian attitudes, the SEAL instructors used precision and psychological pressure to identify weaknesses and push candidates beyond their perceived limitations. They were looking for specific qualities that couldn't be taught: mental toughness, adaptability under stress, and the ability to function when exhausted, cold, and pushed to the breaking point. Chief Petty Officer Harrison was the lead instructor, a quiet professional with 15 years of SEAL experience and multiple combat deployments. During his initial briefing to the new class, he made it clear that their goal wasn't to make candidates stronger or faster, although that would happen as a byproduct. Their mission was to identify who had the mental fortitude to endure SEAL training and eventual membership in the teams. Statistics showed that fewer than 20% of candidates would ultimately graduate from the full SEAL program. The physical standards at NSWPS were significantly higher than basic training requirements. The minimum physical screening test scores that had challenged Sarah during high school preparation were now considered entry-level expectations. To graduate from preparatory school and advance to SEAL training, candidates needed to achieve scores that represented the top 5% of all Navy personnel. Sarah's early assessment scores placed her comfortably above the minimum requirements, but she quickly learned that minimum standards were irrelevant in this environment. Swimming became the foundation of every training day. The pool sessions began before sunrise and continued in various forms throughout the day. Candidates learned advanced techniques like underwater knot tying, equipment recovery from the bottom of deep pools, and long-distance swims while fully clothed. The water temperature was deliberately kept uncomfortably cold, adding an additional stress factor to every aquatic exercise. Sarah's natural swimming ability was enhanced by her high tolerance for cold water, a trait that would prove invaluable in later phases of training. The most challenging swimming evolution was the 50-meter underwater swim. Candidates had to complete the distance on a single breath, maintaining perfect form and technique while fighting the body's natural urge to surface and breathe. Sarah's meditation and breath control practice from her teenage years gave her an advantage in this exercise. She approached it methodically, using visualization techniques to remain calm and conserve oxygen while her body screamed for air. Running evolved from basic cardiovascular exercise into complex problem-solving scenarios. Candidates ran with progressively heavier loads, over increasingly difficult terrain, and under time pressures that seemed impossible to meet. The instructors would frequently change the rules mid-exercise, forcing candidates to adapt their strategies and push through mental barriers. Sarah learned that success often came down to mental attitude rather than physical capability. During one memorable running exercise, the class was tasked with completing a 12-mile movement while carrying 70-pound packs and various pieces of equipment. Halfway through the course, Chief Harrison announced that they had fallen behind schedule and needed to pick up the pace significantly to avoid failure. Several candidates immediately assumed the task was impossible and began discussing how to minimize their punishment for failing to meet the timeline. Sarah took a different approach. She analyzed the remaining distance and time, calculated the pace required, and realized that success was possible but would require perfect execution and unwavering commitment from every team member. She began encouraging her classmates, redistributing weight from struggling candidates to stronger ones, and establishing a sustainable rhythm that the entire group could maintain. Her leadership during this exercise was noted by the instructors and became a defining moment in her development as a potential SEAL. Obstacle courses at NSWPS were designed to simulate the physical and mental challenges of combat operations. Unlike the standardized obstacles from basic training, these challenges were constantly modified and made more complex. Candidates might arrive to find that familiar obstacles had been reconfigured overnight, forcing them to develop new techniques and strategies under pressure. Sarah's rock climbing background proved invaluable, but more importantly, her ability to analyze problems quickly and adapt her approach made her consistently successful. The confidence course reached new levels of complexity and psychological pressure. Heights increased, time limits decreased, and the consequences of failure became more severe. Candidates who showed hesitation or fear were immediately identified and subjected to additional scrutiny. Sarah's comfort with heights remained an asset, but she also discovered that she could help teammates overcome their fears through careful coaching and moral support. One of her classmates, Petty Officer Williams from California, had a debilitating fear of heights that threatened to end his SEAL aspirations. During a particularly challenging rope climb evolution, Williams froze 20 feet up and couldn't continue. Rather than simply completing her own climb, Sarah positioned herself on an adjacent rope and talked Williams through each movement, providing constant encouragement and specific technical guidance. Her patience and leadership helped Williams overcome his fear and complete the evolution successfully. Combat training at NSWPS introduced weapons and tactics that went far beyond basic marksmanship. Candidates learned close-quarters combat, explosive breaching techniques, and advanced firearms handling under stress. The training scenarios were designed to overwhelm candidates with multiple demands simultaneously, testing their ability to make life-or-death decisions while physically and mentally exhausted. Sarah's prior experience with firearms gave her a foundation to build on, but the complexity of special operations tactics required intense focus and continuous learning. Hand-to-hand combat training became increasingly sophisticated and realistic. The instructors were all experts in military martial arts, and they systematically broke down and rebuilt each candidate's fighting techniques. Sarah's smaller size was initially seen as a potential disadvantage, but the instructors taught her to use leverage, timing, and aggression to overcome larger opponents. She learned that mental aggression and technical precision could overcome significant size and strength disadvantages. During one combat training session, Sarah was paired with Thompson, a former college football player who outweighed her by nearly 100 pounds. The exercise required them to alternate between offensive and defensive roles while the instructor critiqued their techniques. Thompson's approach relied heavily on his size and strength, telegraphing his movements and leaving himself vulnerable to counterattacks. Sarah waited for her opportunity, then executed a perfect arm drag followed by a rear takedown that left Thompson flat on his back, surprised by the speed and effectiveness of her technique. The psychological aspects of NSWPS training were as challenging as the physical demands. Candidates were subjected to stress interviews, sleep deprivation, and constant evaluation of their mental state under pressure. The instructors were experts at identifying psychological weaknesses and exploiting them to determine who would break under the extreme pressures of SEAL training. Sarah's mental preparation from her teenage years served her well, but she also learned new techniques for managing stress and maintaining focus in chaotic environments. Sleep deprivation became a constant factor in the later stages of preparatory school. Candidates were routinely awakened for surprise training evolutions, equipment inspections, or emergency response drills. The ability to function effectively on minimal sleep while maintaining safety standards and team cohesion was considered a crucial indicator of future success. Sarah's disciplined sleep habits from her preparation years helped her adapt to the irregular schedule, but she also learned power napping techniques and efficient sleep strategies. Team-building exercises at NSWPS were designed to identify natural leaders and assess how candidates functioned under the pressure of group dynamics. Sarah consistently emerged as an informal leader during these exercises, not through aggressive dominance but through competence, reliability, and genuine concern for her teammates' success. The instructors noted her ability to motivate struggling team members while maintaining high personal standards. During a particularly challenging team exercise, the class was required to transport a heavy rubber boat over a mile-long obstacle course within a strict time limit. The boat weighed several hundred pounds and required coordinated effort from all team members to move effectively. Halfway through the course, two candidates began arguing about strategy, threatening to destroy the team's cohesion and ensure failure for everyone. Sarah immediately stepped in to mediate the dispute. She listened to both perspectives, identified the valid points from each approach, and proposed a synthesis that incorporated the best elements of both strategies. Her calm, rational approach diffused the tension and refocused the team on their mission. They completed the evolution with time to spare, and the instructors used the incident as a teaching moment about leadership under pressure. Academic instruction at NSWPS covered advanced topics like small unit tactics, intelligence gathering, and mission planning. The pace was intense, with complex subjects compressed into short time blocks and immediate practical application required. Sarah's study habits and academic discipline served her well, and she often found herself helping classmates who struggled with the theoretical aspects of special operations work. Navigation training introduced sophisticated techniques for land and sea movement without relying on electronic aids. Candidates learned to use map and compass, celestial navigation, and dead reckoning techniques that could function in any environment. Sarah's analytical mind adapted well to navigation challenges, and she developed a reputation for accuracy and reliability that made her a valuable team asset during field exercises. As NSWPS training progressed toward its conclusion, the intensity increased dramatically. The final weeks included comprehensive testing of all skills learned during the program, combined with scenario-based exercises that simulated real-world special operations missions. Candidates were evaluated not only on their individual performance but on their contribution to team success and their potential for further development. The final physical fitness test at NSWPS represented a quantum leap from basic training standards. Sarah needed to complete a 1,000-yard swim in 20 minutes, perform at least 70 push-ups and 60 sit-ups in 2 minutes each, complete 15 pull-ups, and run 4 miles in 32 minutes. These standards would have been impossible for her to achieve when she first enlisted, but months of progressive training had transformed her capabilities dramatically. Sarah approached the final test with quiet confidence. Her preparation had been thorough, and her performance throughout the program had consistently exceeded expectations. She completed the swim with time to spare, maxed out the push-up and sit-up requirements, knocked out 20 pull-ups without struggle, and finished the run in under 30 minutes. Her overall score placed her second in the class and established her as a top candidate for advancement to SEAL training. The graduation ceremony for NSWPS was more subdued than basic training graduation, reflecting the serious nature of the path ahead. Of the 13 candidates who began the program, only 9 remained to graduate. The others had been dropped for various reasons ranging from academic failure to inability to meet physical standards to psychological unsuitability for special operations work. Sarah understood that the attrition would only increase as training became more demanding. Chief Harrison addressed the graduating candidates with characteristic directness. He told them that completing preparatory school was merely earning the right to attempt SEAL training, not a guarantee of success. The next phase of their journey would test everything they had learned and push them beyond anything they had experienced so far. Only a small percentage would ultimately earn the right to wear the SEAL trident, and there was no shame in recognizing one's limitations and pursuing other paths of service. For Sarah, graduation from NSWPS represented the culmination of years of preparation and months of intensive training. She had proven her competence in every required area and demonstrated the leadership qualities that SEALs valued. More importantly, she had gained confidence in her ability to excel in an environment where most people failed. The next step would be the ultimate test of her dedication and capabilities, but she was as ready as anyone could be for the challenge ahead. Naval Amphibious Base Coronado represented the final destination of Sarah's journey toward becoming a Navy SEAL. The sprawling facility on the Pacific coast was home to basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, the legendary program that had broken countless hopefuls and forged the elite warriors who formed the backbone of naval special warfare. As Sarah's bus crossed the bridge onto the island base, she could see the infamous obstacle course and training facilities where her ultimate test would unfold. Bud/S Class 347 began with 42 candidates from diverse backgrounds. Some, like Sarah, had come through the preparatory program, while others had transferred from fleet assignments after demonstrating exceptional performance in their ratings. The group included former college athletes, experienced sailors seeking greater challenges, and a handful of officers destined for SEAL platoon leadership roles. Despite their varied backgrounds, they all shared the common goal of earning the right to wear the SEAL trident. The first phase of BUD/S training focused on basic conditioning and water competency. The daily schedule began before dawn with physical training designed to push every candidate beyond their perceived limitations. The instructors, all experienced SEALs with multiple deployments, approached their mission with scientific precision. They understood exactly how much stress the human body and mind could endure, and they calibrated their training to operate at that threshold continuously. Physical training sessions at BUD/S redefined Sarah's understanding of intensity. The 4-mile runs were conducted in loose sand, making each step exponentially more difficult than road running. Ocean swims in the frigid Pacific tested not only endurance but mental toughness, as candidates fought hypothermia while maintaining proper stroke technique. Calisthenics sessions involved hundreds of repetitions of basic exercises, performed to the point where muscles failed and willpower became the only factor determining success or failure. The pool competency testing introduced scenarios that seemed designed to induce panic in even the most water-confident candidates. The instructors would attack candidates underwater, tying their equipment in knots, turning off their air supplies, and creating chaos that simulated combat conditions. Candidates had to remain calm, solve problems methodically, and complete required tasks while their bodies screamed for air and their minds fought the primal fear of drowning. During one particularly challenging pool evolution, Sarah found herself underwater with her diving mask ripped away, her breathing apparatus tangled, and her fins pulled off her feet. The instructor continued to harass her, grabbing her equipment and creating additional problems while she tried to sort out the existing ones. Sarah forced herself to remain calm, working through each problem systematically while her lungs burned and her vision began to narrow from oxygen deprivation. She successfully completed the evolution, but the experience taught her that technical knowledge and physical conditioning were meaningless without absolute mental discipline under extreme stress. The obstacle course at BUD/S was famous throughout the military as the ultimate test of functional fitness and mental toughness. The course included rope climbs, wall traverses, log carries, and a dozen other challenges that required combinations of strength, agility, and problem-solving ability. Candidates were timed on individual runs and competed as boat crews, with the understanding that fast times earned privileges while slow performance resulted in additional training and scrutiny. Sarah's approach to the obstacle course reflected her analytical mindset and competitive nature. She studied each obstacle carefully, identifying the most efficient techniques and practicing them until they became automatic. Her lighter weight was an advantage on rope climbs and pull-up base challenges, while her rock climbing background helped her navigate complex traverse problems. Most importantly, she learned to maintain perfect technique even when exhausted, understanding that technical precision was more valuable than raw power. Boat crew assignments created the team dynamics that would define much of BUD/S training. Sarah's 7-person crew included Martinez from New Mexico, Johnson from Michigan, Park from California, Williams from her preparatory school class, Thompson the former football player, Roberts from Virginia, and O'Brien from Boston. They were responsible for their inflatable boat small throughout training, carrying it everywhere, maintaining it constantly, and using it for ocean paddling exercises that tested teamwork and endurance simultaneously. The boat crews competed in everything from paddle races to beach runs to obstacle course times. Success brought recognition and small privileges like first in line for meals, while failure resulted in additional physical training and closer instructor scrutiny. Sarah emerged as her boat crew's informal leader, coordinating their efforts and motivating struggling teammates. Her leadership style was quiet but effective, based on competence and genuine concern for collective success rather than personal dominance. During Hell Week, the infamous 5-day test that eliminated more candidates than any other aspect of SEAL training, Sarah's leadership qualities were put to their ultimate test. Hell Week began on a Sunday evening with a surprise attack by the instructors, who used simulated explosions, gunfire, and chaos to immediately thrust the candidates into a survival mindset. For the next 5.5 days, the candidates would be allowed a total of 4 hours of sleep while enduring continuous physical and mental challenges designed to break their will. The first night of Hell Week was always the most shocking for candidates. The instructors maintained constant pressure through calisthenics, cold water exposure, and psychological games designed to make quitting seem like a rational choice. Sarah watched as several classmates rang the brass bell that signified their withdrawal from training, unable to cope with the immediate intensity and the knowledge that 4 more days remained ahead of them. By dawn on Monday, Class 347 had shrunk from 42 candidates to 31. Tuesday of Hell Week brought the notorious surf torture, an evolution that involved sitting in the frigid Pacific Ocean while waves crashed over the candidates' heads for hours at a time. The water temperature was in the mid-50s, cold enough to induce hypothermia in less than an hour without proper mental preparation. Sarah used the meditation techniques she had learned years earlier, focusing on breathing and visualization to distract her mind from the physical discomfort. The instructors walked among the shivering candidates, offering medical drops to anyone who felt they couldn't continue safely. The temptation to quit was overwhelming, as the simple act of standing up and walking away would end the suffering immediately. Sarah watched Thompson, her boat crew teammate, begin to show signs of severe hypothermia. She moved closer to him in the water, using her own body heat to help warm him while encouraging him to maintain mental focus. Her quick thinking and selfless action probably prevented a medical emergency and kept her boat crew intact. Wednesday brought the famous log PT, an evolution where boat crews carried telephone poles weighing several hundred pounds through a series of exercises designed to exhaust them completely. The logs had to be lifted overhead, carried for miles along the beach, and used in various calisthenics that required perfect coordination among all 7 crew members. Sarah's boat crew developed a rhythm and technique that allowed them to perform efficiently despite their growing exhaustion. During one log carry evolution, Williams began to falter under the combined effects of sleep deprivation and physical exhaustion. The crew's performance immediately suffered as they lost coordination and struggled to maintain their pace. Sarah recognized the problem and called for a quick redistribution of positions, moving Williams to a spot where he could contribute effectively without carrying the full weight load. Her tactical thinking and immediate adaptation kept the crew competitive when they might have fallen behind. Thursday of Hell Week traditionally included the most complex scenarios, combining physical challenges with problem-solving requirements that tested candidates' ability to think clearly when exhausted. Sarah's boat crew was tasked with a navigation exercise that required them to paddle several miles offshore, locate specific waypoints using map and compass, and return within a strict time limit. The evolution was complicated by strong currents, limited visibility, and equipment that had been deliberately sabotaged to create additional challenges. Sarah took charge of the navigation responsibilities, using her preparatory school training to plot courses and account for tidal effects. Her mathematical precision and ability to remain calm under pressure proved crucial as other boat crews became lost or failed to manage their time effectively. Her crew completed the evolution successfully, earning recognition from the instructors and additional confidence in their collective abilities. Friday's final challenges pushed candidates to their absolute limits before granting them the first real sleep they had experienced since Sunday. The evolutions included a final paddle race, obstacle course runs, and a series of team challenges that tested everything they had learned during the week. Sarah's performance remained consistently strong despite 5 days of sleep deprivation and continuous physical stress. Her boat crew finished Hell Week with all 7 original members intact, a rare achievement that spoke to their teamwork and collective toughness. The weekend following Hell Week provided candidates with their first opportunity to recover and reflect on what they had accomplished. Of the 31 candidates who had survived Monday morning, only 19 remained in training. The attrition rate was typical for Hell Week, but each loss represented months or years of preparation that had come to nothing. Sarah used the recovery time to help struggling classmates and reinforce the team bonds that would be crucial for the remaining phases of training. Phase 2 of BUD/S training focused on land warfare and small unit tactics. The academic requirements increased significantly, covering subjects like demolitions, reconnaissance, and close-quarters combat. Sarah's analytical mind adapted well to the complex tactical problems, and she consistently scored in the top percentile on written examinations. The practical applications required her to synthesize theoretical knowledge with field skills under realistic conditions. Demolitions training introduced candidates to the controlled use of explosives for tactical purposes. Sarah learned to calculate blast effects, prepare charges, and execute complex demolition schemes that could neutralize enemy fortifications or create tactical advantages for friendly forces. The precision required was absolute, as mistakes could result in mission failure or friendly casualties. Her mathematical background and attention to detail made her one of the most reliable candidates in explosives handling. Small unit tactics training taught candidates to operate as members of 4-man fire teams, coordinating movement and fire support in realistic scenarios. Sarah's role varied depending on the specific mission, but she consistently demonstrated the ability to make quick tactical decisions and communicate effectively under pressure. Her teammates learned to trust her judgment and rely on her steady performance in high-stress situations. The land navigation course tested candidates' ability to move precisely through unfamiliar terrain using only map and compass. Sarah's experience from preparatory school gave her a foundation, but the BUD/S course was significantly more challenging, requiring nighttime movement through complex terrain while carrying full combat equipment. Her methodical approach and mathematical precision made her one of the most accurate navigators in the class. Phase 3 focused on maritime operations and underwater demolitions, the historical core of SEAL capabilities. Candidates learned advanced diving techniques, underwater navigation, and complex mission planning that integrated all their previous training. The scenarios became increasingly realistic, simulating actual special operations missions that SEALs might be called upon to execute in combat. Advanced diving operations pushed candidates to their limits in underwater environments. Sarah learned to navigate in zero-visibility conditions, place explosive charges on underwater targets, and coordinate complex operations with her dive buddy. The mental discipline required was extraordinary, as mistakes underwater could be fatal. Her comfort in aquatic environments and ability to remain calm under pressure made her one of the strongest performers in this phase. The final field training exercise integrated everything candidates had learned during their months at BUD/S. Sarah's team was assigned a complex mission requiring infiltration by sea, reconnaissance of a defended position, placement of demolition charges, and extraction under enemy fire. The scenario lasted 3 days and required perfect coordination among team members, precise timing, and flawless execution of complex technical tasks. Sarah's performance during the final exercise demonstrated her evolution from a determined civilian into a skilled special operations professional. She coordinated underwater approaches, calculated explosive charges, and led her team through enemy positions with the confidence and competence of an experienced operator. Her instructors noted that she had not only met every standard but had consistently exceeded expectations throughout training. Graduation from BUD/S represented the culmination of Sarah's journey from a Texas teenager with big dreams to a qualified Navy SEAL. The ceremony was attended by her family, fellow graduates, and the instructors who had pushed them beyond their limits for 6 grueling months. As Sarah received her SEAL trident, she understood that she had earned more than just a qualification badge. She had proven that determination, preparation, and unwavering commitment could overcome any obstacle. The weeks following graduation brought assignment to a SEAL team and integration into the operational community. Sarah's reputation had preceded her, and team leaders were eager to evaluate her capabilities in the operational environment. Her first assignment would be to a training unit where new SEALs learned advanced techniques and prepared for deployment cycles. It was during this advanced training phase that Sarah encountered Sergeant First Class Murphy, an Army instructor on loan to the Navy for specialized combat training. Murphy was a career soldier with multiple combat deployments, but he had never worked with female special operations personnel. His initial attitude towards Sarah was skeptical at best, colored by outdated assumptions about women in combat roles. The tension between Sarah and Sergeant Murphy built gradually over several weeks of training. His comments became increasingly inappropriate, questioning her physical capabilities and suggesting that she had received special treatment during SEAL training. Sarah initially chose to ignore the harassment, focusing on her performance and allowing her results to speak for themselves. However, Murphy's behavior escalated beyond professional disagreement into personal attacks that threatened to undermine unit cohesion. The confrontation came during a combat training exercise in front of 500 soldiers from various units participating in the joint training program. Murphy had been assigned to demonstrate hand-to-hand combat techniques, and he deliberately selected Sarah as his demonstration partner, intending to use the opportunity to embarrass her in front of the assembled troops. His plan was to use his size and strength advantage to overwhelm her, proving his point about women's unsuitability for combat roles. Sarah recognized Murphy's intentions immediately but accepted the challenge, knowing that backing down would validate his prejudices and potentially undermine her credibility with the other service members watching. As they faced off on the training mat, Murphy made the same mistake that many larger opponents had made before him. He relied on brute force rather than technique, telegraphing his movements and leaving himself vulnerable to counterattacks. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. Murphy lunged forward with an aggressive takedown attempt, but Sarah sidestepped his attack and used his momentum against him. Her counterattack was swift and decisive, combining a perfectly timed hip throw with a follow-up strike that sent Murphy crashing to the ground. The impact was severe enough that Murphy's leg was fractured in the fall, ending both the demonstration and his attempts to undermine Sarah's position. The aftermath of the confrontation was swift and decisive. Military investigators determined that Murphy's behavior had constituted harassment, and that Sarah had acted in legitimate self-defense when attacked during the demonstration. Murphy faced disciplinary action and was removed from the training program, while Sarah received commendations for her professionalism under difficult circumstances. The incident became a defining moment, not just for Sarah's career, but for the integration of women into special operations forces. The 500 soldiers who witnessed the confrontation spread the story throughout the military community, establishing Sarah's reputation as a serious professional who could hold her own against anyone, regardless of size or experience. The incident also served as a powerful deterrent to others who might have harbored similar attitudes about women in combat roles. Sarah had proven through action rather than argument that competence and determination were more important than size or gender. Following the incident with Sergeant Murphy, Sarah's career trajectory accelerated rapidly. She was selected for advanced training programs, deployed with operational teams, and eventually earned recognition as one of the most capable operators in naval special warfare. Her journey from small-town Texas teenager to elite special operations professional had taken years of dedication and sacrifice, but the moment when she stood over Murphy's broken form represented the culmination of everything she had worked to achieve. Sarah's story became an inspiration for other women seeking to break barriers in military service and special operations. Her success demonstrated that with proper preparation, unwavering determination, and the courage to face any challenge, it was possible to excel in even the most demanding fields. The young woman who had once dreamed of becoming a Navy SEAL had not only achieved her goal but had helped pave the way for others to follow in her footsteps.